Hello guys, my name is Adam Elterhoney with Roxy Cards, and I am here at Pro Tour Oath of the Gatewatch with local Atlanta player Brian Eason. Brian, how's it going?
Good.
So, what do you think this Pro Tour is going to look like?
So I think this Pro Tour is going to be very diverse. I think the top 6 decks will only make up 40% of the metagame. I think the top 6 decks are probably going to be Burn in first, Abzan second, and then a mix of Red Green Tron, Merfolk, and Affinity and Infect, of course. Affinity might be a little bit higher, but historically in Pro Tours, Affinity hasn't gotten as much representation as it's deserved. So, but yeah, I think the top 6 will be the mid-range deck to beat will be Abzan. Tron will be the kind of like combo oriented. It's not really a combo deck, but once it assembles Tron, it kind of just wins the game. And then you have all the various aggro decks like Burn, Affinity, Infect, and Merfolk. So
okay. What did you think about the banning of Splinter Twin in Silver Bloom?
It's actually kind of funny because initially I thought it was a terrible decision. Obviously, banning Bloom I think was a given. Deck 1 turn 3 30% of the time. But banning Splinter Twin, originally it seemed bad because that I thought it kept the format in check, but in reality, after playtesting a bunch, I kind of realized that it actually opened the door for more decks to come in. And the deck I'm playing right now, for example, which is Zoo, it had a really bad matchup against, and the fact that Splinter Twin is gone made that appeal of the deck so much better. So I think in the end, it's not, people said it kept Tron and Affinity in check. In reality, the deck had like a 50% win rate against Tron, and maybe, it did crush Affinity, had like a 65% win rate, but I think overall it's not going to have a huge impact on Modern. I think Modern has so many different decks that just because they removed one deck, it wasn't as big of a linchpin in the format as people thought it was. So I think it's going to have an impact. I think it's going to make aggro a lot better. And by making aggro better, it's going to cause a cascade of the metagame to shift to beat aggro. Maybe Abzan will play more removal spells in the main deck. And I think people are playing like more engineered explosions board now, which I really dislike, unfortunately. But so I think that's kind of the direction the format's going. The mid-range decks are going to be hating on the creature-oriented decks, and their sideboard is going to be very geared towards creature decks and Tron. And there's no really big combo deck in the format anymore.
Yeah.
You have Gristle Shoal and you have Ad Nauseam are the two, I guess. You can call them big combo decks, but they're not really played. The problem with Gristle Shoal is it can lose to itself. I've tested that deck, and sometimes you actually get a symbol Gristlebrain and play turn 3, but you don't draw the Nourishing Shoal, or you don't draw the World Spine Worm. You do draw the Nourishing Shoal, and then Ad Nauseam you don't consistently kill on turn 4. So yeah, both of those decks have a lot of problems going for them, but I think that Nourishing Shoal is really good, and the entire deck is solid, so I think that deck could be very good right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a lot of talks of different new decks, a lot of Eldrazi decks that are going to show up. What are your thoughts on that?
I think in order to play Eldrazi deck for this tournament, should probably be main decking cards like Timely Reinforcements. I know in the past people have played Lingering Souls, but I think aggro and burn is just going to be such a big role player in this tournament that you really need to be prepared for it. And I think naturally the Eldrazi deck is just too big and a little bit too clunky for that deck to be good. But it did get Thought-Knot Seer, and it was missing a 4-drop, so that's going to help the deck a lot. But yeah, I think you can construct the deck in such a way that it's going to be good against the field. But it still ultimately has a problem of Modern is such a diverse, it has such a diverse metagame that, like I said, the top 6 decks aren't even going to represent 50% of the format. So you really need to be prepared for everything. And I just don't personally think the Eldrazi deck is powerful enough to be a strong competitive player across all the decks in the format. I could be wrong. I mean, I did spend I didn't spend a significant amount of time testing it, but I definitely messed around with different lists, and I saw the strengths and weaknesses. And when you draw Eldrazi Temple, that deck is very impressive. When you don't draw Eldrazi Temple, that deck's not very impressive because you can go Ivugan into Urborg, but you can't cast your Thought-Knot Seer off that. So, and that's one of the deck's better cards. So it'll be interesting to see what people do with it. I suspect if somebody spent a lot of time investing into it, I think they could come up with a good list for this tournament. But to me, that just wasn't the angle I wanted to attack the format in.
Okay. What did you say? You won this invite with a limited Grand Prix. This is Modern, obviously. What's your favorite format?
Well, my favorite format has always been Limited because I think Limited requires a significant more, maybe not creativity, but it's more open-ended. When you draft, there's so many different directions you can go, and there's so much flexibility in deck building. I really like the fact that you have a timed deck building, you have a timed opportunity to draft. Whereas like in Constructed, you have a lot of time to prepare and you have a lot of time to metagame. So Limited's kind of testing your more like critical thinking skills, and whereas like, well, I mean, that's not necessarily true. It's kind of hard to explain, but
Dude, that's my
I'm trying to
favorite
choose my
format,
words
so-
carefully, because what I'm saying, I mean, both formats take a significant amount of critical thinking skills, but I think Limited is just, it's more like, it gives you more opportunity to use your creativity, I feel like. Whereas like a format like Modern, although a new set did come out, I think a lot of the decks have been established, and your creativity really is like, how are you what 1-0s are you gonna play, what's your sideboard gonna look like. Whereas like in Limited, you can be very dynamic, you can have very different strategies than other players, and I really like the ability, drafting is really hard to figure out. And I love the fact that in Limited, there's so many differing opinions, because I probably have a very different opinion on so many different cards and what colors I want to be and what archetypes I want to draft, other than other players. So I think that's when there's a lot of disagreement about what's good, I think that's a good sign that the format's healthy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. So you mentioned Zoo.
Right.
What are your thoughts on how it's going to perform this weekend? I mean,
Well, honestly, I have a lot of coin flips. I think a lot of them are slightly favored, like 55-45. My deck's very good against Tron and Affinity. It's like 50-50 against Abzan, especially if Abzan's going to be playing a lot of hate against it. I think if Abzan isn't playing a lot of hate, I think it's pretty favored for me. But my deck kind of folds Engineered Explosives, and I think it's only maybe like a 2-of. But it's just one of those things that where if they draw it, they probably win the game.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the deck's really good against Affinity, Tron, and Merfolk, which were 3 of the top decks. The Infect and Burn matchup are more about the die roll than anything, so it's just going to be a coin flip. But one thing I really like about it is, like I said, Modern is such a diverse format, and I really like playing a deck that's really linear and can just like, I'm just trying to focus on just killing you by turn 4. And my whole sideboard is basically just, I have Molten Rain, Scavenging Oozes, and then I have like some specific targeted hate for the coin flip matchups, like I have Phyrexian on Life for Burn, and I have Tormod's Crypt for Living In and Gristle Shoal, because those are like my weak matchups. But yeah, I really like Zoo's ability to just, it has a very simple game plan. It's like Affinity in the sense that it can kill your opponent very fast, and it's more resilient than Burn, because your creatures give you recursive damage rather than your burn spells having a one-time effect. Whereas, Affinity can very easily be hated out. If you wanted to beat Affinity, you could board enough cards in your deck.
Oh, yeah.
And that might not be the case for this tournament, but I expect a lot of Stony Silences. And I think Tron and Affinity have a big target on their head. So I went more, I kind of went with the same route that Affinity would go in, but I played a deck that has less hate cards against it. The cards that hate against me are like Fire Spout, Radiant Flames, Engineered Explosives, and they are played, but they're usually only like 1 or 2 ofs in sideboards, whereas like everyone has 2 Ancient Grudge or like plus the extra, plus explosives too. So a lot more. Their deck might
are always the worst.
Yeah, game 1, but I think that Zoo is. I'm willing to sacrifice a little bit 1 percentage points for just having a more all-around solid deck that's hard to hate out. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So new set. What cards do you think are going to make a difference? Did you add any Oath cards to your deck or anything?
I did try Goblin Bushwhacker, because Burning Tree and Goblin Bushwhacker is a way to kill your opponent very fast. I could very well be wrong, but if the format is the way I think it is, and it's very diverse, I don't want to play Bushwhacker, because against decks like Abzan, you want each individual card to be solid. You want each card to do recursive damage. And Goblin Bushwhacker sometimes is just going to be a 3-mana 2/1. So, but if you Burning Tree into it and you have a turn 1 play, you can attack for 10 or whatever, and that's very, very explosive, and that's very, very good if you're playing in a very fast format where you're racing against Infect and Burn. But if the whole format is like if the entire format was super fast, I think I would just play a deck that was targeting against. I think the case is there is going to be a lot of really fast decks, but there's also going to be Abzan, a wide array of other kind of mid-range style decks, like maybe Eldrazi. So I would rather play a deck that's just a little bit less explosive and just a little bit more solid overall. So I'm personally not playing any new cards, but to answer your other question, what other new cards can I see? I think Thought-Knot Seer is going to be the best one for the Eldrazi. I think Reality Smasher might be played as a 1 or 2 of, but that deck lacked, the Eldrazi deck lacked 4 drops, and the Thought-Knot Seer just fits perfectly in that slot. So I would say that'd be the card that gets the most play out of the new set.
Okay, well, perfect. Well, Brian, thanks for your time. We'll be sure to check you out this weekend.
All right.
Good luck with everything. We
Thank
hope
you.
Top 8 and win it all. And that's Brian Eason, guys. Have a good one.